Today in history, that time peace and love John Lennon almost beat a man to death. In 1963, something important was happening. The Beatles were beginning to become famous in Europe. Well, a little over a year earlier, they had signed with a manager who was called Brian Epstein. And by the way, this guy died really young, just 4 years later, of a drug overdose. But what's important to the story at hand today is that Epstein was really gay. Now, according to Pete Best, the Beatles' drummer before Ringo, Brian had tried making passes at all 4 of the Beatles, including himself, and was met each time with a polite rejection. Many Beatles fans knew about Brian's secret life and assumed that Paul, the cute Beatle, and the one most of the girls liked, was the object of his affections. Nothing could be further from the truth, though. It was the loud, overbearing, and aggressive John Lennon who Brian was apparently crazy about. In spring of 1963, the Beatles were now one of the hottest acts in Europe. Their records were selling like, let's go with an old classic, hotcakes. The first album was sitting in the #1 spot on the charts, their concerts were selling out to capacity crowds, and within a few brief months they would be playing the Royal Variety performance in front of the Queen of England herself. It was around this time that, out of the blue, John and Brian decided to take a break in the Beatles' very busy schedule and go together for a holiday to Spain. The first suspicious thing about this amongst fans was, well, why did John go on holiday as his wife had recently given birth to a new son? Historical note: Cynthia had given birth to Julian, John's first son, on March the 8th, 1963. John later stated that this was rotten and selfish and blah blah blah, but at the time he stated, "I wasn't going to break the holiday for a baby. I just thought what a bastard I was," and went. The trip with Brian and the timing of it certainly sparked rumors that it was a romantic getaway. It's also probably worthy to state here that Lennon was known for having countless affairs, although these were with women. Indeed, he later admitted that he had had a few hundred affairs during his 6 years of marriage to Cynthia. In any event, fellow Beatle McCartney had his own take on John's Spain trip with Brian. According to Paul, the trip's purpose was for John to assert who the real leader of the Beatles was with Brian. Basically, that John took Brian on the holiday to make sure Mr. Epstein knew who to listen to in this group. Whatever the case, John and Brian spent 12 days together in Spain. "We used to sit in cafes together," recalled John. "Looking at the boys, I'd say, 'Do you like that one? Do you like this one?' I was rather enjoying the experience." When John and Brian returned, the gay rumors were now intensely swirling. Things came to a head with a disc jockey the Beatles knew named Bob Wooler. Wooler was a very close friend of the Beatles and had introduced them on stage around 300 times. But today in history, on June the 18th, 1963, at Paul's 21st birthday party, a bit of teasing by Wooler and John Lennon's reaction to it would ultimately change Lennon's life forever. Now, despite his image today, at the time Lennon was known for his often violent temper. Indeed, shortly before his death, he stated, "I couldn't express myself, so I hit. I fought men, and I hit women." So it's perhaps no surprise that Lennon, who was also a notoriously violent drunk and had been heavily drinking at the time, didn't take kindly to Wooler saying, "Come on, John, what really happened with you and Brian? Everybody knows anyway, so tell us." In a blind rage, John proceeded to beat the stuffing out of a very surprised Bob Wooler, literally kicking him repeatedly in the ribs as he lay on the ground in a bloody heap. According to John, the only reason he actually stopped the savage beating was because "I realized I was actually going to kill him. I just saw it like a screen. If I hit him once more, that's really going to be it. I really got shocked, and for the first time thought, I can kill this guy." Wooler was rushed to the hospital by Brian, who was also present at Paul's party, and given treatment for a variety of things, including broken ribs. Luckily for John and the Beatles, Wooler survived the beating. Incredibly, John actually refused to apologize for this, later noting, "He called me a bloody queer, and I bashed his ribs in for it." Because of this refusal, Brian had a writer for the Daily Mirror, Don Short, send a telegram on John's behalf apologizing. The telegram read, "Really sorry, Bob. Terribly sorry for what I have done. What more can I say? Signed, John Lennon." In addition to that, a payment of £200, which is about $2,200 in today's money, was also given to him as compensation. As to why the gay accusation set him off, he noted in an interview shortly before his tragic death in 1980, "You know, when you're 21, you want to be a man. If someone said it now, I wouldn't give a shit." He went on, "I must have been frightened of the fag in me." Of his relationship with Epstein, Lennon would state in that same interview, "It was my first experience with someone I knew was a homosexual. It was almost a love affair, but not quite. It was not consummated. But it was a pretty intense relationship." So he kind of got away with it, so now you might be wondering, well, how exactly did this change Lennon's life? Well, he later stated, "It was the last fight I ever got into. That's when I gave up violence because all my life I'd been acting like that." So that's another Today in History, a new series here at Today I Found Out. Do remember this is in addition to our regular video today, so check that out as well. And if you did like this one, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, well, give it a thumbs down. I don't mind. And leave us a comment to let us know what you think. I would like that. Let us know how we're doing, how you like this new series. Whether you'd like us to continue, we don't really know. That's what comments are for. And for now, though, I'll see you in the next one.